Eddie's mastery was coming up with these incredible, interesting, complex, and yet super groovy and just sort of enticing tunes.
Greetings, Nick with Sweetwater here, and today I'm lucky enough to be joined by my good friend Pete Thorn. Now, Pete's in town to show off his brand new signature guitar and signature head, dun dun da, and I figured what better opportunity than to talk to this man, pick his brains about someone he knows a lot about, Edward Van Halen. And what we're going to do is talk about the stuff people don't talk about a lot, mainly Eddie's rhythm playing, which was quite remarkable. Everyone talks about the tapping and the pick harmonics and the slides and the dives, but the rhythm, the songwriting, the chords he used were just amazing. And this man is a master. He doesn't know this, but the first time I became aware of him was when YouTube was in its infancy. I was one of those guys who always wanted to master Eruption. I still haven't mastered it, but there was one part that always bugged me after this tremolo picking. And I was talking to a friend of mine called Smitty in Florida one day. He said, hey, go on YouTube, check out this guy called Pete Thorn. He's done a video on that, and it's the best I've ever seen. So he's here today. So I'm going to pick your brains about Mr. Van Halen. So let's talk about what makes Eddie unique rhythmically.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you. That video was shot in my tiny apartment on a 2006 iMac, using the internal camera of the iMac to actually film this, so imagine. But that was the dawn of YouTube, you're right, it was like early days. That video, it's crazy, it really took off. I didn't know what to do on YouTube. I'd started my channel,
right,
and I was like, I don't know, maybe I'll teach a little bit or something. So I thought, oh, Eruption, that'll be a good idea. Not a good idea. It took me so long to film because I figured out I don't know how to do tablature and stuff and videos, so I'm gonna have to explain every note. So it became, that was back in the days when YouTube videos could only be 15 minutes.
Right.
So it became a 5-part series, and it took me forever. Yeah.
Well, thank you for doing that, because it made me better, so.
Oh, I appreciate it. A guy came up to me in Portugal about a year after I put it out and poked me in the chest on the street and said, hey, you taught me how to play Eruption. And that was the eye-opening moment for me, actually, with YouTube, where I was like, whoa, like this thing I shot on my iMac at home could actually go halfway around the world.
Right.
You know, and this guy found it, and I was like, light bulb, you know, that YouTube is going to be a big deal. So it was an interesting thing. And another little aside about that video, Eddie at the time was renting a house. I didn't know this until years later after I met him, but he was renting a house that you could throw a stone and hit from my place.
Get out.
Yeah, literally just above my bed. I lived on a hill in the San Fernando Valley, and really just above that hill over a fence. Like literally he was my neighbor.
Wow.
And so I just was in there practicing the solo and, you know, recording the video for like a month. And I can only imagine that, like, you know, stop playing my solo down there, shut up.
You're playing it wrong, damn it. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. It was really funny. I didn't realize till years later that he had that house rented and was spending some time up there. But yeah, he's a fascinating rhythm guitar player. Yeah. And it was really, I mean, if it had just been the solos and stuff, we wouldn't be talking about him like we do, I think.
Right.
It was about the songs and about the, because Van Halen was really, you know, you had the Dave as the master of ceremonies kind of, and later Sammy and stuff, but you had this master of ceremonies kind of thing, and a party sort of atmosphere. Underneath it all, though, the thing that they were sort of like, not hiding, but it was there, and we knew it as guitar players and stuff, was there was some really crazy musical stuff going on.
Yeah.
Some deep musicality. And so when anybody's like, oh, Van Halen, that's just, you know, whatever, goofy rock or whatever, I'm like, yeah, man, you haven't listened
you haven't listened properly. Listen to what's going on under the mania of Dave.
Yeah.
Because some of the rhythm parts he's playing, insane.
Oh my God.
Brilliant.
And Dave, part of his genius was he was really good, I feel like, at weaving it all together.
Oh yeah.
You know, with a melody on top that could tie things together. I'll use the B section in Unchained. You know, non-stop talking, what a rocker.
Blue-eyed murder in the
right? So if you listen to the rhythm part underneath that, even if we just demonstrate it for a second. That's what's going on underneath.
Yeah.
My E string or D string is a little out of tune there, but you get the idea. And Dave somehow tied that craziness together with a melody on top that all made it flow straight into the chorus. And it was like a hook. It was amazing. It was a sum of the parts, like any great band, like Led Zeppelin or like The Who or like anything. It's a sum of the parts. But Eddie's mastery was coming up with these incredible, interesting, complex, and yet super groovy and just sort of enticing tunes that, you know, yeah, we can discuss today.
And going off script again, because this is very impromptu, by the way, folks. So I've got a little cheat sheet just off camera, but we're just riffing, pun intended. And by the way, just so you know, I have a guitar purely as a safety blanket. He's playing, therefore I am not going to. I am not stupid. So unplugged.
Come on.
This is my unplugged version of me. Like I said, security blanket. I love the Sammy stuff, but
Yeah.
I'm a Dave era guy ultimately.
Yeah.
And to me, the difference between the two, you know, Sammy was great and everything, but when Dave came back and they did Me Wise Magic, it was like Eddie started playing differently again, and so did Alex for that matter. It was like it was
Yeah.
back to the party almost.
Those tunes, just like what could have been, Me Wise Magic and Can't Get This Stuff No More, were came out on the '96.
Best of both worlds, wasn't it?
And it was the kind of greatest hits. And
Yeah.
they did 2 new tunes with Dave, and that's when they showed up at the MTV Awards with Dave, and then, you know, they had a falling out right after that.
Of course they did.
It totally fell apart. But I loved those 2 tunes, and they're really cool. And yeah, all the close voicings that Eddie was doing. You know, when you were talking about that thing that I played you earlier, that little,
Yeah.
that little thing that I
Yeah.
was playing earlier, that was some of that Can't Get This Stuff No More sort of voice.
That's where it's, yeah, gotcha.
That's where I think I get those sort of like, and we'll talk a little bit about that and demonstrate some parts that have these sort of dissonances and chords that you wouldn't normally hear in hard rock music.
Yeah, like 13th we were just discussing, and
Yeah.
9ths and 7ths, and yeah, not the normal fodder, if
I mean,
you
maybe
will.
we should just just show it. Like Panama, for instance, you know, if we talk about Panama, you know, the fact that there's this D, I guess it's a 13, like it's a... Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's not a hard rock chord.
No, but it is now.
It is now. You know, whatever he did there, you know, right?
Yeah,
And-
just great stuff.
And then you mentioned susses. All the dissonances before the vocal even
Yeah.
comes in. More sort of, you know, a standard. But that chord, you know, it was great how he played stuff like
Yeah.
that and would fit it in.
I remember talking to someone years ago, it might have been George Lynch, and he said, if you play something with conviction, it's right. And that's the one thing that always struck me with Eddie, is he wasn't trepidatious about anything. He meant every note and every chord he played.
Yeah, that's totally true. Yeah, I believe he did. Yeah, he was really intentional.
Like, this is it. This is not a happy accident. I meant this.
And he looked like he was having fun while he
Oh,
was doing
that,
that. He was
and
always
that to me is
smiling.
the ultimate. That smile was like, I think Andy Wood said it recently. That he looked like he was having more fun than anyone else on the planet,
Yeah.
and you could kind of tell. Actually, it came across in the way he played.
I remember Johnny Mark, who I love. Like, I
Right.
love Johnny Mark. I love his guitar playing. I love listening to him now. I think he's fantastic. But they had a little kind of, I don't know if Eddie was involved, but there was one of those sort of rows back in the, you know, in the day in the 80s or 90s, and Johnny kind of slagged him a little bit in an interview. But years later, Johnny actually went to a Van Halen show, and I love his story about going to see Van Halen, how he's like, oh yeah, I'd kind of said some stuff earlier in the press about him years ago, but then I go see him play, and he looked like he was having such a good time, and how can I hate on this guy that's having they were from such different worlds, you know, the Smiths and Van Halen.
Yeah.
But Johnny got it years later, and I love
Yeah.
that, you know, with maturity or whatever, with age, he was able to appreciate Van Halen finally, and the
Yeah.
things that we all love about him, so.
We were talking about like his, you know, like the often overlooked magic, and one part is we were talking about like Jamie's Crying, how he's like playing bass and he's playing chords and he's playing a lead line. So
Yeah, so part of the thing that Eddie did was he just wasn't hammering away on power chords like a lot of rock guitar players. It wasn't just about roots and fifths and stuff. He would be sometimes playing a bass line, a riff, chords in the middle, and jumping around on the guitar strings. So like Jamie's Crying is like a great demonstration of all that happening. That's the rhythm guitar part.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like all this stuff
that's
happening.
nuts. That's like 2 guitar parts in
Yeah,
one, or
yeah.
3.
Right? Sometimes that chord or... All these little little hooks. I mean, that became Funky Cold Medina. Later it got sampled, right, for It's Such a Hook. And it was just one little piece of Eddie's rhythm guitar playing.
And we were talking too about Beautiful Girls, about how that is a really, really weird, quirky rhythm part, but it works.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not until you try and play it, you go, wow, that's weird.
So it's similar in the swing.
Right.
Beautiful Girls. So it's got this swing that the Van Halen brothers would do. Right, that swing.
That's hard to nail.
Yeah, it is. And because you're going from the D string down to the E string. And then that little chord. He might do it there. I'm not sure exactly where he played it on the record. It could be D down to B here, or the D down to B here. You know, and then this part rolls the volume down on the guitar. And then you have to sit there with a metronome and just work it and work it and work it. You ever see that scene in it's Michael Jackson, and it might be in This Is It, where he's talking to, I think it's the bass player in the band, and he's describing a part to him, and he's singing it like that. And he goes up to him, and the guy, he's playing it, pretty close, but he doesn't quite have it. And he says, respectfully, and then he sings it. And it's got this swing and this, like Michael Jackson only, he was very funky, and he had this swing, and he's singing the part. And that's what that part reminds me of.
Right.
When it's got to have that snap and that swing. With it's the duration of the notes. It's not just where you place them, but it's how long you hold them and then cut them off.
Right.
Like who else was doing that,
Nobody.
It's so crazy,
Yeah, and his swing was so wide but so precise.
Oh my God, super precise.
Almost hard to duplicate, almost impossible to duplicate. Like I'm the One, ridiculous.
I'm the One swing is so, if you slow it down, it's really bonkers. But, nobody plays it. It's very difficult to play right. But let's see if I can get close. So, you'll hear a lot of people or so you can put a metronome on and just sit there and work on it. Which gets us to the kind of pull-off stuff that you were talking about.
Yeah,
right?
His use of open strings is fascinating to me, and that was one of the things that opened the door for me. And by the way, he's just illustrated why I'm not playing. I swing like a brick relative to this man. But yeah, the way he uses open strings, like in that particular run. It's very rhythmical, though. It's rhythmical, but the notes are correct because he's playing in A, and all those open notes are in A minor.
Yeah, and the thing about it too is that they go by so fast.
Yeah.
That as long as you start in the right place and end in the right place, it almost doesn't matter, and that's illustrated by his symmetrical stuff.
Yeah, which is what he would always refer to as falling down the stairs and landing on your feet. I love that remark.
Yeah.
So
But his symmetry was quite brilliant, though.
yeah,
Like,
I mean,
I'm
he
the
would-
one again.
Yeah, so he did this. This lick is almost next in the tune. Right, that whole thing.
Yeah.
You know. And he does it at the end of the jump solo too, which is right at the end of the solo.
Yeah.
So it's the same pattern. So it's this kind of like half step.
1, 2,
and a
4,
whole
yeah.
step. Yeah. So if we analyze the notes, like in I'm the One, it's obviously in a kind of an A minor. The notes, we'll just move them down an octave from the where he plays it up here. But if we go down here, that's kind of the pattern he's playing. It's basically like, yeah, so you get a starting on a major third here, right? And then to the 6th, the flat
But he
7.
kind of goes Dorian.
Yeah,
Almost.
then it
he
goes kinda yeah.
major to Dorian to.
So it's minorish, you
Yep.
know? But then, which is the flat 5.
Flat 5, so blues
E
in
flat.
Dorian.
But then he kind of goes to the major 7, which is super not blues.
Which is a harmonic minor almost.
but
it works.
It just sounds cool, yeah.
So major Dorian blues, harmonic G, yeah, but it
Yeah.
works.
We're analyzing it. He never did. He
No,
just
and
played a
that's the
pattern.
thing.
Yeah.
And it worked.
He
It
played
was,
a pattern, started on the right note, and ended on a good note. And
yeah,
Cool.
and that was it.
And that was it.
And talking about open strings, by the way,
Yeah.
we were talking about that too, is that he does that great little thing in Eruption, like the blues lick.
That whole lick, right?
Yeah, just so he's only picking the G and the B strings. He starts on the flat 5, then open E, then he does a hammer on from nowhere and does that to open B. It's like fascinating.
Yeah. So it's kind of if we consider starting. That's really what it is. So yeah, flat 5. And that's the whole lick. So it's the starting on the 8th fret of
Yeah,
the
eighth on the G, yeah.
of the G string. And then you're playing E flat to an E. And you got to snap that note, that E. You know, that sort of that whole thing, you know, that he does so well. And so you're playing that, snapping that E, and then pulling off from the 8th fret down to the 5th fret on the B string
To open.
to the open B. Yeah.
And
you
you're
get
not
that-
picking the B string at all, you're just doing a hammer on from nowhere.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Right, that whole thing that he does in that lick in Eruption, but it shows up in I'm the One, and it shows up in Somebody Get Me a Doctor.
Yeah, he just moves it to B.
He moves it up. That's right. So the second solo in I'm the One. Right, does that thing,
Yep.
right? And that's the second solo. So he's simply moved it up a whole step.
Yeah, and it works because the open E and the open B will still work because they're within the key.
Yeah.
But like you said, he wasn't thinking about. He was just. It was something that worked.
It was
and
just something that worked.
Yeah.
Flashy stuff that worked. You know,
Yeah.
that was fun to kind of fill the holes and fill space with.
And once again, very rhythmical. Like you said, there's that snap. You've got to get that snap. So it wasn't. It wasn't.
Yeah.
Like AI couldn't do that. I'm sorry.
No.
EVH can, AI can't.
Yeah, because it had an imperfect character to it and this very dynamic character to
Yeah,
it.
Women in Love. He does that great E to F sharp to G thing with the open.
Oh, at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the end of Women in Love. Kind of that tension that, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, you heard guys like, you know, Alex Lifeson doing the F, 11, that chord. But yeah, Eddie used it too.
Yeah, and he used it well.
And the other great thing about that song, and this is another thing about his playing, was the voice leading.
Right,
I mean,
yeah.
He'd utilize those open strings and also voice lead and let the dissonances just sort of. You know, that, the way he dragged that, he's dragging the pick
Yeah.
too, really, like. Right, all that stuff. stuff with the big open chords and the voice leading. That's not blues at that point. That's getting into, you know, a little bit more classical song.
Yeah, it is.
You know, with the voices leading against one another. You know,
Because I believe, didn't he start on piano, I believe? Didn't he play piano for a number of years?
He was
so maybe that's a remnant of that in some weird way.
Yeah.
I've never heard anyone play it like he does on guitar.
Yeah, I mean, his dad was a jazz musician.
Right.
So he grew up hearing that too. And then he was, classically trained, you know, piano, like in competitions and things like that.
Right.
And I guess he always said he couldn't read music really, but he could just memorize things by ear.
Right.
So he would go do these competitions and pretend he was reading, but he'd have everything memorized.
I didn't know that story. That's
Yeah.
freaking great. And in the previous riff, you hit some really interesting natural harmonics, and he does the same in Drop Dead Legs. Let's talk about that, because that's
Oh,
fascinating, his use of them there.
Well, he built this little melody out of harmonics that naturally occur, yeah.
Right.
So it was like in the bridge where the breakdown happens, and so it was... So he's dragging across the 7th fret of the A string and the D string and the G string. So he plays this like little da 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 da. He's playing like this great little voice, and it's voice leading.
Yeah.
You know? And then he does it again, la da. So he's playing a whole melody with it. It's so cool.
Just inventive, clever use, like musically clever.
Oh my God, it's so fantastic. If I can get... There we go. Let me get a little drop D going here. I'll add a little harmonizer. It was so cool, right? I mean, it was such an interesting, like...
And the thing that gets me too is that, and it goes back to Ain't Talking About Love,
Yeah.
his brilliant use of palm muting, like on
Oh, yeah.
arpeggiation, like
Oh,
to produce popped it, man.
Well, I mean, when he did the... There's that voice leading again.
Yeah.
So he's palm muting, he's voice leading, doing all this crazy stuff.
Doing little bends as well.
Well, that's it. I always thought that song went like, first of all, I didn't know it was drop D. I always thought it was... I thought he was
Right.
using a bar. He's not using the bar, he's going... This ghost bend thing that he does that sounded like a whammy bar to me. That was so mean, right? He goes... Yeah, that's
Yep.
what it does. No, it's so cool, and then it gets all Holdsworth after that.
Yeah, and it's just such a groove as well. There's such a, like, I hate to keep saying it, but it's the musicality. And then to me, music is the ultimate, like, it's the only true international language. His language was so moving.
Yeah, yeah, and it sounded fun in like the summertime.
Yeah, but there was also an angst to it as well.
Yeah,
But a smiley angst.
Oh yeah,
if that makes sense.
No, there was there was darkness sometimes for sure too. But yeah, you got there was humor too. A lot of humor in his playing. I mean, all the kind of crazy, when he'd do the making elephant noises.
It's elephant, yeah, and the horse thing he did, yeah.
All the squeals.
Just nuts.
Yeah.
And that was one thing I did like when Dave came back, is it was like the humor. There was humor when Dave was there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, Sammy was more like the good time rock and roll party, I guess, and Dave, there was this tongue-in-cheek kind of like a lot of humor and kind of different kind of...
Ain't talking about love as opposed to why can't this be love? I know he said that once, the difference between him and Sammy.
I mean, I like both eras of the band.
Yeah, me too.
But they were a different band,
yeah.
And that's that chemistry thing. You change out one member and
it
changes, Which is, we got to give Al some credit here, because a big part of the stuff that we're talking about, the groove, the swing, the feel, is those two brothers mind melding one groove machine.
Yeah.
And, I feel like that kind of culminated for me. I mean, they did a ton of great stuff after, but 1984 was like one brain. When you listen to Girl Gone Bad, that it's insane. It sounds like what is even going on?
It's like telepathy or something. It was like they were feeding off each other, but moving together as one. Total parallel. When one swung, just nuts.
It was like, oh my God, like the level of that, they were like floating on top of the groove. It was just so cool. Yeah.
And the thing that fascinated me too, and it's an old story now, but the fact that Eddie started wanting to be a drummer, and then while he was doing his paper route, earning the money, Alex got better on the kit, so he ended up being a guitar player.
Yeah.
And the same was true of another band that swings marvelously, different genre really, but Pantera, same thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Dime wanted to be the drummer. Vinny got better while Dime was making the money. And there's something about brothers playing guitar and drums together, especially when the one brother who's a guitar player starts as a drummer, because both bands swing so wide and deep.
Yeah, Pantera was definitely the, really, and of course Dime had a lot of admiration for Eddie.
Oh yeah, his symmetry again.
Yeah, and I definitely think that that there's a similarity there. Like when I listen to those guys, I sort of think like, oh, this is like a combination of like real thrash era Metallica and Van Halen.
Right, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's kind of the sound.
Another thing we were talking about how in Light Up the Sky, he almost makes up for only being one guitar player with that G.
So on Light Up the Sky, yeah, he did this thing. It's similar to the Jamie's Cryin thing and stuff, where he's jumping all over the place, playing a riff, playing an open chord, back to a riff and jumping around on the strings from low to high and stuff. This is a little more subtle variation on that, but I love it. Like, so Light Up the Sky starts, of course, with the really cool, like where the bass goes down and the guitar goes up. With so the guitar goes, right, and does that thing. And then, that's what I was talking about. Was
just that one the extra G.
Where he sneaks the G in underneath as the chord's ringing. I love that.
Yeah, and if you kill the A ringing, it doesn't sound right anymore. You need that dissonance.
You need the thing ringing underneath. Yeah, and you'll see him playing that underneath, and it's so cool. It was almost like that song to me is kind of. That's Richie's influence.
Yeah,
that's the dyads. Which Van Halen did a lot of. The kind of the 2-string. Or sometimes 3-string, sometimes add in the B string in, but and then adding the bass in, it was almost like a highway star thing, right?
Now let's quickly talk about something you've touched on in your own videos, but the tuning of the B string.
So the tuning of the B string, I was bringing that up a second ago, where sometimes he incorporated the B. This is a magic thing, because you can get, sound out of the two strings, but sometimes adding in that third on top is what Van Halen would do via the B string, right? And but he didn't do the tuning to the tuner. The tuning was slightly flattened and tempered. So if you just play, like, let's say, like the top three strings of a C with the root on the fifth string, you can hear the of the major third. So just the middle two strings, right? The nice and in tune, steely kind of interval. But add that third,
you get that beating,
and it's slightly sour sounding.
Yeah.
We're used to it. I mean, the guitar is an imperfect instrument, but so we're used to it. But if we take it and we just flatten it, somewhere 8-9 cents. Now you get a bigger chord, because you can play that third, and the third becomes like part of the power chord.
And the other thing that we were going to touch on, and you did it beautifully then, almost like a segue, is the combination hand movement pick slide.
Which is the thing that you got to do in the middle of that riff, to get it to really be right. It's not just a pick slide, and it's not just a hand slide. Pick, left hand.
Yep. Yeah. And the other thing people often missed out is the whacker, is that quick in between.
Yeah, and so the combination of his old Marshall, the way it would compress and explode when he would do stuff like that, and his aggressive right hand.
We could go on and on and on and on, and I'm sure we will in another video. But Pete, in the meantime, thank you so much for doing this. I have to go practice right now. I hate you.
I appreciate you so much, man. Your enthusiasm for this stuff. This was your idea, and I'm really glad we did it. It's cool to sit down with you here and make this video. So
that's $5 I earn, by the way, folks. But anyway.
Thank you so much for having me out here at Sweetwater. Thanks so much to Sir for bringing me out here, and this was so much fun. Appreciate it.